Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a really fascinating, frankly profound subject, the very identity of God. We're going to do a systematic, chapter-by-chapter breakdown of David K. Bernard's highly influential book, The Oneness of God, and we'll be analyzing its core claims specifically through the Biblical Unitarian framework. If you love a structured, logical deep dive into theology, you're in the right place. This is going to be a seriously eye-opening exploration. So let's just lay out the fundamental contrast right up front. On one hand, you have Bernard's premise, the oneness manifestations model. This is the idea that God is a single, solitary being who essentially puts on different masks or plays multiple roles, like Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But contrasted with that is the Biblical Unitarian model. This framework argues that God is a single, unipersonal Father, period. And Jesus, he isn't God wearing a human mask, but rather a distinct, genuine, fully human Messiah. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover roles and manifestations, then theophoric names, the concept of the robe of flesh, whether or not a nature can actually pray, heavenly visions and Hebraic agency, and finally, we'll wrap up with the only true God. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Roles and Manifestations, which tackles chapters 6 and 7. You've probably heard this before, right? The father, son, husband analogy. Oneness teachers use this all the time. They say a single man can be a father to his kids, a son to his parents, and a husband to his wife. One being, 3 titles. It sounds super neat and tidy. But here's the glaring issue. The New Testament consistently shows the father and the son in active interpersonal relationship with each other. The father sends the son obeys the father. They actually converse. A man's role as a father literally cannot have a conversation with his role as a husband. Roles don't interact. Conscious, distinct persons do. And this naturally brings us right to the Shema in Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. The Hebrew word for one here is echad. When we reclaim the Shema through this Unitarian framework, it becomes crystal clear that God is a solo person, a singular he. The strict monotheism of the Old Testament just doesn't leave room for God to be some sort of organization or a single entity playing multiple parts like an actor on a stage. Moving right along to Section 2, Theophoric Names. This takes us into Chapter 3 of the book. Now, Oneness theology puts massive weight on the claim that the literal name of the Father is Jesus. But we really have to pause and look at ancient naming practices, specifically theophoric names. A theophoric name contains the title or name of God, but it acts as a descriptive sentence about what God is doing. Think about the prophet Elijah. His name literally translates to "My God is Yahweh," but obviously no one in ancient Israel thought this human prophet was actually Yahweh himself. Similarly, the name Jesus, Yeshua, means Yahweh is salvation. So the key takeaway here is that naming the Messiah Yahweh is salvation is a beautiful testament to the Father's work through this man. It absolutely does not turn the man into God. The name honors the sender. It identifies the human agent through whom the Creator is bringing salvation. That brings us to Section 3, the robe of flesh, dealing with Chapter 2 and the incarnation. Bernard uses a very specific metaphor for the incarnation, saying he put on flesh as a man puts on a coat. It's the idea that the Supreme Creator just wrapped himself in a human body. But if we actually play this out logically, we hit a massive theological roadblock. That roadblock is a concept called anhypostasia. It means an impersonal human nature. Look, if the Messiah's humanity is just a coat or a biological shell worn by the Father, then you don't actually have a human being at all. You just have human biology animated by a divine person. By treating the flesh like a suit, the oneness model unavoidably strips Jesus of his genuine, complete human personhood. He isn't a true human who grew and learned. He's literally just the Father walking around in a human suit. Now, practically speaking, how does this play out? Let's look at Section 4. Can a nature pray? This covers chapters 5 and 8. We have to ask the hard questions. Think about the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus is on his face, sweating drops of blood, crying out, "Not my will, but yours be done." Who in the world was he talking to? If Jesus is simply the Father in a robe of flesh, this is a severe dilemma. Oneness theology often tries to explain this by saying the human nature of Jesus was praying to his divine nature. But just think about what a nature actually is for a second. A mere biological nature cannot possess a will to submit. A nature cannot be tempted, and a nature definitely cannot pray. Only a distinct, conscious person can do those things. A nature is a what. A person is a who, and it takes a who to pray. Which leaves us with what we can call the problem of theological play acting. God is omnipotent. He doesn't need to pray, and he sure doesn't pray to himself. If Jesus isn't a completely distinct human person with his own unique human will, then Gethsemane, with all its tears and agony, becomes an act, a theatrical performance put on for our benefit. Only a genuine human Messiah, separate from the Father, can actually truly submit his will to God.
Let's shift gears to Section 5, Visions and Hebraic Agency. This dives into Chapter 4 and the Book of Revelation.
When we look at Revelation 5, we have to avoid what's called the visionary collapse, which is when people accidentally smash distinct biblical figures together into one. The text actually explicitly separates them. You have the sovereign God, identified as him who sits on the throne. And entirely separate from him, you have the Lamb. They are distinct subjects. The Lamb literally has to approach the one on the throne to take the scroll.
So, how do we explain the Lamb's massive authority without saying he is the Father? It all comes down to the ancient principle of shalia, or Hebraic agency. In that ancient culture, a deputized agent stands in fully for the principal who sent him. Dealing with the agent is legally the exact same as dealing with the sender. This perfectly explains how the Lamb can share the throne and receive honor without being the exact same person as the Creator who originally sits on it.
The hierarchy here is so consistent. God is never called the Lamb, and the Lamb is never called God. The eternal God cannot die, but the Lamb was slain. And Jesus explicitly tells us that he sat down on the throne because the Father granted it to him. The unipersonal God is working entirely through his supremely exalted human agent. Jesus is the ultimate deputy. Finally, let's tie all of these threads together in Section 6, the only true God. Just look at John 17:3. It's foundational. Jesus is praying directly to the Father, and he says that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. It perfectly summarizes the Biblical Unitarian model. Two distinct entities, a unipersonal Father who is the only true God, and a distinct, genuine human Messiah who was sent by him. I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. Think about the awe-inspiring obedience of Christ. Does a genuine human Messiah, a true man who faced our exact temptations, cried real tears, and had to completely submit his own will to the Father, glorify God more than if he were simply the omnipotent Creator just wearing a temporary human suit? I'm going to leave you to ponder that one, because discovering the true, uncompromised humanity of Jesus might just be the most amazing revelation of all. Thanks for exploring this with me today.